Here I am. It's been a while since I've streamed, so I might be a bit out of the loop for it. And the reason for that is not because I've not been wanting to. I quite enjoy streaming. It's just that it's one of those things that I have a lot of things in the way. I've actually gotten a and it's not killing animals in Minecraft. It's actually been D&D, and it's one of those things that out of all the things that happened throughout quarantine, I definitely did not expect for that to be one of them, for me to acquire that hobby. Mostly because it's such like, I guess, a nerdy thing, but then it's kind of me that I'm talking about. Because it's one of those, I'm a pretty huge nerd now that I'm thinking about it. Yeah, granted, I've been having so much fun with it, just like creating my own stories, and also I have a bit of stick drift, so that's not me moving it, that's my controller being broken. Or maybe not being broken, but it's getting there. It's living its life to its best of its ability. But I unironically have been having so much fun with D&D because at first it was just me I don't know, just wanting to try it out. I saw like a YouTube playlist. It wasn't like Critical Role or anything. Wasn't even Dimension 20. It was Team 4-Star that, ooh, emeralds. Kind of like brought it on because they had like their own little D&D campaign, and that kind of wanted me to get into it at least. But it, like, at first it started with just me wanting to just like binge watch like their whole series, and I was like honestly like very upset that it eventually ended. Like, all good things come to an end, that sort of spiel. But then like I had like a little bug that just kept biting at me, just like telling me just like, hey, you know you still like it, a lot, so why don't you just join somebody else's campaign session. And that's where I took off with this basically addiction of story writing, or just creating stories at this point. I wouldn't say it's full-on story writing because it's just D&D and it's just me, but who knows, I might actually like go into full detail about certain things here and there. For example, some of my first characters have like kind of a basic backstory, which I will get. Wait, is that a dark oak forest? Hey, yo, let's go. They do have like a fairly basic. This is a weird seed. Anyway, I wouldn't say tragic backstories. Well, they are kind of tragic, but it's like I don't try to make them tragic because I don't want. It's not that I don't like edgy like backstories or characters like that. I do feel like if done correctly, they could be very good. It's just that I didn't want to be like an edgelord on my first character, because then I feel like I would have gone through a weird rabbit hole. Ow. Why does it suddenly have stick drift? I never had stick drift until I guess today. Granted, it has been a while since I've used the PS4, so maybe I just need to give it a deep clean, maybe? I don't know. But I digress. It was tragic, but at the same time it was more or less well, it wasn't entirely tragic, my first character, but I created it. I had a lot of fun with him, and with the session and campaign. We did like an Icewind Dale sort of campaign. So for those of you that actually do know D&D, you guys yourself, then that would be a pretty good. You have a pretty good idea of what it was about. Just like God, I don't even know like the full lore of it now that I'm thinking about it, because I joined in for the sessions and I was actually quite excited to join in on them. I had a lot of fun. There was one very funny occasion about this gnoll that just basically achieved Ultra Instinct that I will touch into in a bit, but bottom line is that it was like a very fun campaign slash session. However, for some reason the DM said that he was gonna take a quick break for, you know, just because he felt like it, and I respected that, and because he probably has his own life, so everybody does can't do like D&D for like the rest of their lives. So if they need a quick break, yeah, sure, that's fine. And he never talked back again. Yep. But so yeah, that was a bit saddening. But after like I played my very first, I guess, sessions here and there, the little bug stopped fighting as badly. But then oh boy. But then little by little it started like nagging at me again, just like, it was really fun, those D&D sessions. Maybe you should try again. And then so I brought up the topic to like some of my friends on a Discord server that I'm at, and then they were just like, they were also in on the idea of like having a D&D campaign, but the problem was that nobody was willing to be a dungeon master or DM for short. And then I saw, like I said earlier, I saw the whole little the TFS at the table thing, and I binge watched the entirety throughout quarantine. So I saw like the climactic end, and it was like honestly so inspired. Not well. Is inspiring the right words here? Because like it was just it's just a tabletop game, so I don't think saying inspiring was like the right words, but it's one of those things that it like awoke a passion for god damn it, for like seeing stories, and not only seeing them but seeing them Yeah, well, it's not a hardcore world. I just want to make like a world so I could just like stream it and then just like go on rants like this one. But where was I? Right. I guess I could say that it inspired me to just like make my own stories here and there. And it's so much fun. I've been having so much fun just because I'm a weird individual. I can see inspiration from I like to take inspiration from some of the wildest sources. Like for example, what's a good one? I guess it's mostly like a lot of my friends' stories about certain experiences that they've been through. So then I just like kind of like go over it in my head, and then just like developments, just like if it was like a bit more dramatized, and then none of that, but also basically what would happen if somebody like that were in a medieval fantasy setting sort of style, and then I would go with an idea and then just run along with it, and it would actually sometimes it would actually come out good. And when it comes to like the stories that I've mostly been, or the sessions that I've been hosting, oh of course, it's definitely, how do I explain it? There we go. Oh boy. Yeah, it's been, I kind of want to, I'm not normally this bad at the game. I think it's because I had to start up the streams. I was a bit late and in terms of time to actually set it up or be able to set up myself properly. As soon as I joined the world, I just immediately dug myself into a hole. But that's besides the point. Where was I? Right. I would like go with like those ideas and then run along, and most of the ideas have been going pretty well, and I'm actually been fleshing them out. Like I have like actual characters that I guess OCs, which feels weird to say that I have my own OCs, but I do technically. So it's one of those things that it's just weird to like think in retrospective of just like how one little I guess YouTube playlist, and I say little, but it was like each episode was like 2 to 1 hour. Ooh, ow. 2 to 1 hour ish, and then to add on to that, there was also the fact that it had like multiple seasons, so it definitely wasn't a small D&D, I guess, stream, session, campaign, whatever. But it definitely felt like it, judging by like how much fun it was to just simply watch it. Also, did I lose some of my items? Ow. So when I say little, I mean because it felt, I guess, short-lived to me at least, if that makes sense. Oh boy. Oh, come on, you again? But it definitely, yeah, I guess, And not only that, but actually the first group that I managed to join, it was thanks to like TFS, because they did manage to like set up like their Discord, so also have a function that in case people want to like try out D&D for themselves, there actually was like different channels, and that's where I found my first session slash campaign group thing. And recently, ever since I became I guess a DM and been able to come up with my own stories, I've just been having so much more fun, just because I have a problem in terms that I don't have to create like I guess that complicated of lore for certain characters, but I still do. Just because I've been having that much fun with it. A key example is that on my first campaign, which is like mostly deals with like a group of cultists that the main party is trying to take down. You know, the stereotypical, just like a group of adventurers trying to save the day. Granted, a group of adventurers isn't anything but stereotypical, to say the least. But it's been getting to the point where I would even come up with lore or like a backstory for even some of the grunts, like as to how, not necessarily full detailed lore, that is just like who they are, more or less just their motive slash goal, which I'll also get into. But first, I kind of want to talk about how I just love creating backstories and stuff like that. And my first ever campaign session, I created a character named Davbrook. No, wait, Davbrook the Hexed Hero, if I'm remembering correctly. And basically, it was my first ever, I guess, character, so I really didn't know how to like make it, and I didn't even know like what certain classes meant. I thought for the longest time that sorcerer and wizard were basically the same thing, so I never bothered like to actually remember more or less the differences. But basically, Davbrook was a half-orc warlock, and it was one of my very first characters. And at first I just the dungeon master, or I should just probably say DM, was just there, you know, helping me create the character, and we just mostly went with like the automatically generated or available options that it gives you. But a lot of them were just like I was enlisted into the military at a young age, that sort of deal. And not only that, but I managed to surprise others, not with like just my sheer power, but with like in different ways. And how we worked out with Davbrook, and in hindsight, he should have been a sorcerer, and I'll explain why so in a second. Because he was a warlock. Basically means is that they gain their magical abilities to be able to cast spells and whatnot by some other superior being. So with that context, Davbrook was born with magic from that superior being, but he wasn't aware of it. I could go into full details to like his backstory more or less. No, please. There we go. No, God. There we go. I could go into full detail as to like his backstory, which I probably will. I have a fair amount of time to basically, quite literally, rant. But basically, he was born with magic. One day he got in trouble, and because of said trouble, he was basically forced to join the military. He got in trouble again while being in the military. Granted, at this point, he was more powerful and older, and I guess technically wiser. So this time, he was like the village kind of fearing his power was kicked out, banished basically. So to in search of his father, which now that I'm saying that, I should probably, I guess, explain Davbrook's backstory. So Davbrook, I never really named the village, or no, yeah, the village that he grew up in, and I don't know if I ever will, because like I said, that story slash character is still inside, I guess, the world of the Icewind Dale, I believe, or no, the Fury of the Frost Maidens. Now that I'm remembering correctly. So, unfortunately, I mean, theoretically, I have been working on with like this other campaign slash session to bring him back, mostly because I just really want to use him again. It was so much fun to play him and stuff like that. Granted, if he were to theoretically be moved to the different, if basically be transferred, I will need to like workshop a whole other kind of forms, but that's besides the point. Basically, Davbrook was born in this village, and he doesn't know who his father is, but he does know who his mother. And it's like a full orc village. And Davbrook was the only half orc, and the reason for that is because Davbrook's mother is actually a very well-known blacksmith in the town, like the best in the town. So, she gained quite a bit of fame. And also, I didn't came up with like it was like when I barely was coming up with or getting a hang of like creating characters, so I didn't really focus too much. But his mother was like very well known for her craft, and not many people outside of the village like really bothered to like go and make requests for her, because it was like a full orc village. They weren't like very trusting of outsiders. However, on rare occasions, it would allow certain people. And one of those certain people was just like somebody that actually helped defend the town from an incoming invasion of just like other people just trying to disrupt the way they lived. Which, despite being like full-blooded orcs, they weren't like the brute orcs. They were civilized to an extent. Granted, don't get me wrong, they were still battle hungry nonetheless, but they were civil about it. They didn't just go out and kill or attack innocent villages for no reason. They had morals to an extent. As very basically this hero to the orc village, he was allowed inside the village or in passage through the village. And he actually heard tales of Davbrook's mother, of how, by the way, this was before, like, this is more or less how the parents met. Not so much, basically, Davbrook still hasn't been born. So, I still went into a fair amount of detail, despite being my first character. So I hope you got yourself some popcorn, because we'll be here for a while. Anyway. And not many, like I said earlier, he was aware of like the skill of Davbrook's mother had, but it was one of those things where he wasn't afraid to ask for around the village to like, hey, can you do this thing for me? It was more or less just out of sheer respect, just like, okay, I barely saved this village. They're probably not in the best of shape right now, so it might be best to just like let him be. And Davbrook's father, he was like a proper warlock. Although to be more specific, he was a hexblade warlock. And a hexblade, what that entails is that basically they get their, whereas a regular warlock would get their magical powers from some supernatural being of great power, they instead get it from a magically imbued weapon that just allows them to grant powers, or a magically imbued enchanted weapon with great power and great responsibility. And so as like the his father just basically went around town. Still, he was still helping around. He was still a big hand. He just didn't do like the one job and then left. No, he stayed around for a bit. You know, just doing not so much like his duty to like help those that are weaker, just because he how the world worked more or less, or at least how like I thought it worked, is that magic is, although it isn't necessarily frowned upon, it is rarely seen. So not many people who show that they wield magic, especially that show that wield magic aren't all too trusting, just because they are obviously afraid of just like what they could potentially do. So now if somebody were to come in and claims that they can not only use magic, but that magic is not necessarily fully theirs and it's instead granted by a magical sword being deal, then yeah, obviously he wouldn't like basically be showing off his magical prowess, especially considering that he was a hexblade warlock. And so, you know, he helped around the town, that sort of deal, you know, being a good Samaritan. And little by little, he actually got to know Davbrooke's mother, that, you know, the stereotypical love story of just them really getting to know each other. However, she was aware that he was still like an adventurer. He had like, ooh, iron. Like a she could have seen it in his eyes that he loves to go out and basically, like, he wouldn't be able to sit down in one area, that sort of deal. And she also understood that his job was dangerous, so if one day he were to leave and never come back, she would have, you know, obviously hoped that he didn't die, and instead it's just like on some treacherous journey. But she would be like in terms with it, and then one night they embraced each other. And a couple of months, or I guess I should say, no, yeah, like about like 9 months, basically. You know, about the same process as it would make to make a baby at that point. Davbrooke was born, and then he was obviously a half orc, half human, because his father was still a full human. And as he was just a regular human, or I guess half orc, how half orcs work is that they're not as big or as strong as full-blooded orcs. So instead, he was like definitely bullied a lot in school, and this is where actually we get into how he got in trouble the first time around, which was one day he had enough of everybody bullying him, and he just like burst out in rage to a bit too hard, mind you, to the point where he actually summoned a spell for the first time in his life called a Blade of Wrath, accidentally killing a bully. I'm not an edgelord, you are. Obviously, he was still a child, and not only that, but the mother was well respected within the community / village. So they were fine with like keeping the child to her care, but so long as she kept like a close eye on him. So instead, Davbrooke just helped around the shop. You know, he actually started learning a bit of. He managed to use like his magic a bit more often, because where everybody else in the village was like very upset that he has magic, his mother was actually more than happy with it. She was actually very happy that you know, a bit of the late father actually lives inside of him. And I do get it that a sorcerer. So how D&D works is that, as far as I'm aware, there's multiple ways for people to use magic. A bard, which I'm pretty sure if any of you like dabble in D&D, or even just like as a passing glance, there's a joke of how bards seduce dragons. So yeah, bards normally perform with magic, that sort of deal. Druids and rangers are mostly like one with nature, so they tend to. That's how they harness their magic. Warlocks, like I stated earlier, get their power from some superior being. Paladins, from their god of worship. And sorcerers are born with magic because whatever. What the? Is this clay? Oh wait, am I in a lush jungle? Where was I? Oh, right. Sorcerers are born with magic. Because by some way or another, like it could be because one of their parents was a dragon, uh, or that sort of deal. Maybe they fell in love with like a fae type creature, which fae is like this magical realm of just like how to explain it better. A magical realm that basically seemingly has almost to no limits as to like how powerful it potentially is. Because there are beings that are half fae but are still quite powerful themselves. So yeah, it's one of those things where it's a bit complicated, especially for somebody with me that I know a fair amount, but I do not know a lot about D&D, if that makes sense. And that sort of deal. There's wizards that are basically people who learn a different, certain school of magic, whether that be conjuration, alteration, what else? Oh wait, there's also artificer, which I believe is also a different realm on its own in terms of magic. There we go. That's what I wanted. But yeah, and sorcerers are born with it. Davbrok was born with magic, so in hindsight, I should have definitely made him a. Are you kidding me? A sorcerer. But again, I was like brand new to D&D, so I didn't know any better. So cut some slack for me. And where was I? Right. So actually, Davbrok could be potentially like a different timeline where Davbrok is an artificer, considering of how much he spent time around like his mom's shop, just like making different requests here and there. And not only that, but Davbrok actually is quite a handyman in terms of making his own weapons and armor. To the point where like some of the villages were actually quite happy because that Davbrok seemingly fixed his ways and started helping around the village, that sort of deal. Basically willing to forgive his previous mistake. Well, granted, maybe the one who had the deceased son, maybe not so much, but it's neither here or there. So, basically, one day, while he was just basically doing some blacksmithing, he was more or less reaching his teens. Until one of the military generals saw that he was using magic to improve his blacksmithing capabilities, and that's whenever he thought like, ooh, shiny magic help weapons stronger. What if shiny magic help army stronger? Or not so much army, more like militia. Or I don't even know what to consider because it was like the defense group of the village. Because they were, like I said earlier, civilized and to an extent actually quite advanced for just being an orc village, to the point where they had like a leader, and he wasn't elected because he was the strongest. He was elected because he was the smartest. Funny enough. So he took them to the leader of like basically the security offices, and so after that he was basically in his teens he was enlisted into the military against his will. Granted, he was a bit concerned about it, but he actually wanted to do a bit more than just like helping around the shop, which I mean he didn't mind, but he kind of like his father, he had like a little tingling of adventure, that sort of deal. So afterwards, he obviously started working, and whereas a lot of like his, I guess, orc members thought that he would like pull down like the entire security force, he was actually handling his own pretty well, mostly because he was being more in tune with his magic capabilities. So he was actually being able to cast like some pretty powerful spells here and there, just like Eldritch Blast, that sort of deal. And whenever somebody would challenge him, it would be kind of like a deadly combo, considering that he would hold like a sword on one hand and summon his blade on on the other. So it was definitely like, whereas he might not be as strong physically, he was definitely not so much outsmart them, but like outmaneuver them, just considering that he was kind of like slimmer and slightly shorter than everybody else. So Uh, so he was actually being, like I said earlier, I know I keep repeating myself a lot, but it's one of those things where like I don't really care, and if you do, then the door is that way. Anyway, but yeah, he managed to hold his own, and as like he was going out on more and more little missions slash expeditions, he actually got promoted more and more. To the point where he actually had like his own troop of his own to like go around doing some missions that he personally would not only pick, but also in some sense command like his troop, and he actually gained a fair amount of battle expertise. So whenever he was enlisted to the military, he was more or less reaching his teens, and half-orcs age slightly faster than humans, so by the age of 13, 14, 15ish is more or less when they reach maturity. So by now Davbrook is age 25. He's definitely like an adult now in terms of orc slash half-orc biology. So, he was well respected with not only his troop but also at the village, just on how much like incredible stuff he has done, to the point where like whenever he would go like on rescue missions here and there, the certain villages that they would go out and rescue, and yes, they would rescue other villages, they weren't savages. They actually started calling Davbrook the Hexed Hero, considering that nobody really knew how he gained so much magical capability. But they certainly don't mind him having said magical capabilities. Mostly because it's like to their benefit. So as Davbrook was, basically living his best life, he would have like a little... I'm gonna keep the furnace there, just because why not? He would go out on missions, and in case it's like a particularly slow day, he would help his mom around the shop, or at the... Yeah, around the... well, I say shop, but... the forgery? The forgery. Creating some weapons and that sort of deal. It got into the point where like even his own troops are like learning a bit of blacksmithing, because Davrik would always be like, if you know your weapon from the way it was even forged, then you should definitely be able to, or you will be one step closer to mastering it. So even his own men were just like, were in such awe that they actually started learning a bit of blacksmithing here and there. And then one day, the leader of the village gave a special request to Davbrook's troop, which was to escort his son, which was more or less around his teens, to basically escort him to a nearby village, like that he could be able to govern that area. Or not so much govern, but more or less like first try to make a quick little bond slash companionship, in terms of just like, so the village could not only expand but also grow in numbers and power and stuff like that. And not only that, but obviously the village would also be supported and protected by the tribe of orcs. So, as they were going there, his son was a grade A jerk. He would basically flaunt his power because, although it wasn't intended that the leader of the village was born to, or it wasn't elected via who was the strongest, but more or less who was the wisest, his son was, or each leader of the village has always kind of like had both bronze and brains to an extent. And unfortunately, his son, he didn't have the brains. So he was mostly bronze. Should I go to the... I'm gonna go to the cave. He was just basically showing off his immense power, that sort of deal. And it got so bad to the point that he was actually harming the civilians. And Davbrook, obviously being kind of like a people person to an extent, was just like, hey, I know you're the elder son and whatnot, but can you calm down a bit? And then obviously the son, being like, full of himself, was just like, did you just speak up to me? And then just like to prove of how beyond he is beyond, I guess, oh boy, there we go, compared to like everybody in the village, he raised one of his battle axes to potentially kill one of the villagers who was just just vibing, and then so he grabbed an innocent bystander. If I remember correctly, I believe I said a shopkeep female orc, if I remember correctly. And then so Davbrook, kind of a bit upset that somebody like that is like granted such high authority while he had to like basically work his way to the top. He didn't take too kindly to people just flaunting power that was basically given to him. So with like his fit of rage, he managed to stop the son, not his own son, from striking down the woman with one hand. But like normal people, he had, or well, but like most people, he had two hands, so he had to hand axes, obviously. So with the other hand, he reached down for one of his hand axes and was about to swing down, but then Davrook summoned a Blade of Wrath and cut off his arm. And because of that, he was banished from his village because he hurt the elder's son. Granted, and don't get me wrong, the son was asking for it, basically. But obviously, the elder was just like, it's one of those things where like he had like a very warped view of his son, thinking that, oh, my son, he was such an honest and honorable man. Why would you dare hurt such a promising soul? Now he may never fight again. So obviously, and so afterwards, he was banished from the village. But despite being banished from the village, his troops still gave him like a proper goodbye. Like they would like stand at guard as like he was departing the village, and his mom actually surprised him with like a little blacksmithing toolkit that wasn't necessarily a family heirloom, but it definitely felt like Davbrook for him, considering that he knows that was like his mother's own personal kit of blacksmithing weapons. So he took the kit and basically went on his way to probably find his father to know why he has such abilities to cast magic. Assuming, and Davbrook was just basically hoping that his father was still alive somewhere out in the world. And that's basically the backstory that I came up with it. And yes, that was just the entire backstory of just one character. And it was still around the time when I wasn't necessarily the greatest in backstories, but I definitely, that's where like the spark started igniting, basically. Oh, excuse me. But yeah, and obviously like they encountered, he eventually like throughout his travels encountered the adventuring party, and he kind of had, oh yeah, I was right, I was close to a lush jungle. He was aware of the calamity, but he didn't necessarily have to stop it, and he was also a bit preoccupied with just like his own personal quest. So, and the Ultra Instincts Null that I mentioned earlier, what can I drop? Do I have Rotten Flesh? No, I'm good enough. Basically, first I need to give context to like what happened before. I guess we encountered this, little fight. Basically, two new members joined the party, so... And my character, he is like very new to the outside world. Like he doesn't know a lot of like certain customs here and there, much less other ways of fighting. So my character had no idea what a monk was. And coincidentally, a monk joined the party. So basically, he was just like, he just said like a passing remark, not so much to like insult him, but just because he was obviously worried, considering that he knows military tactics, and in case there's somebody in his party or troop, quote unquote, because it wasn't really his troop, but I digress, can't fight, then they should probably make a workaround around it. So he asked, "Can you fight?" And the monk, I don't know how his character was supposed to be played out, but basically he took offense to that. So, what happened was that basically, I'm guessing there was like a little bit of resentment of that remark from the monk to Davbrook. So, whenever like a wee bit time later, they came across some enemies. It basically was a bunch of gnolls, and then now that they had a captain, it was a whole ordeal basically. And Gettledig was, or not Gettledig, that's a different character. Davbrook was struggling with this one gnoll in particular, right? Like he summoned like his long, or he sheathed his long sword and summoned his blade of wrath. And despite him just trying his hardest, could not hit him whatsoever. And then so the monk by this point defeated like 2, maybe even 3 gnolls on his own. And then as a remark, he just said, "Can you fight?" That all smug. And then I was like, "I am trying my best, and I did not mean to insult you." That sort of deal. It was like, my character was obviously like frustrated, but I was having a grand old time because it was such like poetic irony. But then he tried his hand at the gnoll, and he actually missed as well. And then so it would go like a turn of me trying, and then a turn of him trying, and neither of us would hit him. And if we did, by some miracle, hit him, we would somehow be very unlucky and roll as little damage as possible. So then a third person came in trying to kill the gnoll, and we would all be struggling to hit him. Just each time it was our turn, we would just miss after miss after miss. And then until finally Gettledig had, or not Gettledig, Gettledig is a different character of mine that I will go into detail later. But ooh, how did I miss this? Okay, yeah, I got inventory space. Davbrook had the final laugh by dealing the finishing blow, and I was like, I made it sound like he was like very, not so much tired because he was like beaten up, but tired because he just like out of breath tired, if that makes sense. And it was so much fun, and none of that, but we didn't even deal with the captain. He wasn't even brought on yet, so that was even more hilarious when they were just like, this bigger, uglier looking gnoll just appeared. And in case you guys are wondering what a gnoll is, it's basically like a bipedal hyena beast, if that makes sense. They're smart enough to be able to like form themselves like little groups or factions. But honestly, some of them can potentially learn how to speak, but it would take like a huge civilization of gnolls to actually pull something like that off. But yeah, like a lot like orcs. So basically, there's like the feral versions that everybody kills off, and there's like the somewhat civilized versions that they're just aware of and kind of weary. But I still find it hilarious that just Davbrook could not hit him. And as for like the whole idea is to like somehow bring him into like a different campaign. So in this other campaign where Gettledig, the one that I've been actually mixing up, he's another half-orc because I've heard that it was more or less a thing that I know that I wanted to play a monk this time around. So, I thought just like, okay, yeah, sure. I know that monks are very dexterous individuals, so I might as well play a character that has high dexterity. Half-orcs have high dexterity, funny enough. So he was another half-orc. And I will explain his backstory later, but basically in this campaign, basically the party is trying to kill off this cult that's trying to basically bring the end of the world, but they're not aware that they're bringing the end of the world, basically. I will go into detail later, but that's like a whole other plot that will just move to the side for a bit. But, basically, what we're planning to be doing with like this other player in my D&D group, because I'm the DM, and basically I am having a lot of fun because the way I've been so far DMing or going with my campaigns, I've been going with the flow, because not only does it feel more fun for me, but it also gives me like a bunch more room to be like adaptive with like what my players do in terms of like for the story. Because a thing that I really don't like or really don't want to do or be forced to do is basically uh, railroad the campaign to go to a specific direction, because then it's not fun for not only me but the players. So if it's just me being more or less adapted by their decisions, then it gives me a lot more wiggle room to like mess around and stuff like that. And basically, this one player, she's been wanting to do something with like her character and like a whole. It first started like as a simple side quest, right? It's a whole arc at this point, of how much we're going into in detail here. But I digress. Because at first it started just like a simple side quest of just like saving this one person from a certain doom. I don't want to like show spoilers because I have some friends that could potentially see this stream. Granted, I haven't gotten a single viewer so far. That one time that it showed that there was a viewer, that was me checking that the microphone was on correctly. But I digress. There's still a chance that they could potentially see it. And I'm just talking about one campaign. I'm currently running 2 campaigns, and I have not touched the second campaign in the slightest. And I have a third campaign in the woodworks that about 2 continents on war with each other. So that's another kind of worms that I will not go into detail right now, or maybe this stream. I don't know, depends how much my voice has the stamina for. Anyway. But basically, what that side quest entails, or I guess arc at this point entails, is that basically they're trying to go to this carnival sort of deal that held by an evil ringleader type of deal. So obviously the party will come across like some bizarre characters here and there, just like or some bizarre creations here and there, like mostly homebrewed monsters that would fit the kind of aesthetic of an area like this, or an area like that. But we've been having so much fun just like coming up with like the monsters and stuff like that, and I cannot wait to actually be able to play it whenever it's like we both think it's properly done. And basically, the way that one of the things that we have planned is something of a mirror room, where it shows alternate versions of the party. So with that in mind, since it shows like alternate versions, they could see either better or worse versions from themselves, and said versions will attack the party, because it's one of those things where like it's not that they're evil or they come from they come from like an evil parallel world. It's just more or less that the mirror sort of magic chicanery is making them that way, if that makes sense. Oh come on, I just want to fix this hole. There we go. And in one instance, as like the party is like looking through the reflections and then fighting off their evil or not so much evil counterparts, but their alternate reality version counterparts. D&D No Way Home. Anyway. I'm just... Anyway. Where was I? Right. As they're breaking the mirrors here and there to basically stop all the different versions seeping out and basically trying to kill them, they accidentally tear like a little fabric in, I guess, not so much reality, because then that's like a whole other kind of worms that I'm not ready to explore, just because I'm not that experienced yet. But as like they're breaking all the mirrors, just like a little just like a parallel universe of a different scenario comes across where Daft Brook is just like basically just like with his original adventuring party, and it just like gets sucked in into that other parallel world. And I would like love to have like a bit where I'm planning to make Daft Brook be kind of like a different version of Geduldig, which is my character who also has like his own backstory, which I will go into detail. I keep saying that I'll go a lot into detail about certain things. Anyway. Where it's technically in some sense a different version of Geduldig, where Daft Brook he a thing that I never really took into consideration is like Geduldig's past, because Geduldig, or I guess his full name is Geduldig Waffe, which is German for patient weapon. Fun fact. And so where was I? Right. He would Geduldig doesn't know who his parents are. I'm not an edgelord. So instead, an assassin's guild took him in. So basically being an assassin was all he knew. That sort of deal. So basically he, since he was like in the assassin's guild at a very young age, he obviously like was their elite because he had the most experience in some sense. So one day he was sent out to do a mission. It should have been a fairly simple mission, you know, just go kill off these two targets. The person who contracted us paid a lot of money, you know, the stereotypical assassin stuff. I keep saying certain things that probably shouldn't be said like in such a casual tone, but I digress. And basically the two people that he was basically hired to kill were both parents, and they had oh wait, did I say no? A single child, an only child. And Daft Brook, he you know, he may be an assassin, but he has morals. He knows the pain of what it feels to be like not knowing who your parents were. So he doesn't want anybody to live that sort of pain again. So he instead went back to the Assassin's Guild and refused the request. And understandably, he was banished from the guild, you know, stripped away from his basically any honor that he could have potentially had while being in the guild. So, oh, excuse me. Oh. You know, he would, and Geduldig, he has a bit of an anger issue, so each time that somebody even so much looked at him funny, he would, like, not only square up, but leave the opposing party very badly injured. So, as he would basically go around from just wandering around the area, you know, hunting his own food, or maybe just full on stealing from the taverns, because he was to an extent powerful, or not necessarily powerful, but skilled enough to pull it off, and for them to either not notice or just too weak to be able to put up a proper fight. So one day there was just an old man fishing, and then he was just like, "Man, what an ugly face you got there." And Geduldig, you know, obviously being is, if I haven't explained his character or how he's supposed to act in this way, yeah, you could have obviously expect that he went for the kill. But as he tried to go for the kill, his master would just like or this old man would just like either dodge them seemingly flawlessly, or somehow make it so he would accidentally like hit himself by like either running headfirst into a tree, or maybe just like punching a big rock, or I guess I should say boulder. So then the old man said, like, if you want to control your rage there, Sonny, you should probably tag along with me for a bit. And then Geduldig, not really having anywhere to go, he just like decided to go along, not because he wanted to like see what this old dude could potentially teach him, but to see if he has any weakness that he could potentially exploit to then kill him off. So he stuck around with the old man for a fair amount of time, and the old man was actually like very caring for him, despite, you know, Geduldig being there for like or I guess at this point in time, Wafe being there for ulterior motives. And not only that, but the old man knew what his true intentions were. Just like a quick little fun fact for you there. The old man knew, and basically, as like he was, whereas Geduldig Wafe only expected to be there for like a little bit, it just like maybe a week turned into 2 weeks, which then turned to a month, which then turned to 4 months, which then turned to a year, and before you know it, he was basically his disciple / student of the old man. And Geduldig was actually like very attentive to like the old man's teachings in terms of what the old man had to offer in terms of quelling his inner rage. Ow. So as Geduldig was like basically growing older here and there, one day he went, basically they had like a little system where one day the master would go out to hunt, but if he goes out to hunt, Geduldig would have to cook, and vice versa. One day it was Geduldig's turn to go out to hunt, and as he was returning, he saw that the temple where his master and himself lives was on fire. So obviously he would drop his like current hunt and like run in towards to see if he could still help, or if his master was still alive. And Geduldig, as soon as he got close enough to see like who the attackers were, he immediately sensed that there was like some awful, like powerful evil energy just by being able to be within eyeshot of them. So Geduldig, trusting his instincts, he just decided to hide, which he does hate himself for it. And at this point in the story, he is only known as Geduldig. He kind of banished his old name of Wafe, and so basically he was hiding out like not so far, because the temple is like inside a forest that's kind of, why did I put a torch there? Inside a forest that's like a better way to explain it, a forested mountain, if that makes sense. So he just like hid in some bushes here and there. There we go. And thankfully the other cult members didn't necessarily notice him. So what happened after that, he saw that his master died by their hands. And as soon as he saw them like disappear, oh boy. Oh god. There we go. Disappear into the shadows by some odd magic ritual of sorts. Neat. He quickly rushed to his master to see if he still had like a chance of living, because he was aware of how to make like some quick medicine. Because throughout like their experiencing, like his master knew a lot of things that he didn't actually expect him to learn or know. But no, it was too late for the master. So what the master did, knowing that it was more or less his final moments to be still in that realm, he gathered all the power that he could potentially have gotten it, or being able to muster at that point in time, and imbued it all into Geduldig. But he didn't give him like any key, or didn't give him a power up of anything of sorts. He instead imbued him with the knowledge of his techniques, because Geduldig was actually getting well versed enough with the magic, or not magic, with his teachings that, oh boy, there we go, that the master was actually about to start teaching him his techniques here and there. So Geduldig now has the knowledge, and in his dying breath, the master told him this: My techniques will come to you in your most dire of times. And, my boy, remember one thing. Do not forget about your past. Do not be ashamed of it. If it weren't for that, you wouldn't be in this situation. You would be some monster, probably akin to those that slain me down. Although, do not embrace it. Learn to move on from it. I think his master would have died right then and there. So, Gedodic, being understandably upset, grabbed his sword. And that had like the Assassin Guild symbol / logo on it. So basically, understanding what like the final message / lesson that his master gave him. So he went basically on a revenge quest against the cult as to like why did they kill him, that sort of deal. Oh, neat. And the reason I decided to bring up his backstory was, and while his travels, he actually did come across the adventuring party that I'm currently playing with, which I've been having a lot of fun with. Where's the? Oh, there you are. And basically, it's one of those things where Gedodic doesn't know his parents, and I don't know if I should make Gedodic basically Daftbrook, but under different circumstances. Like, what if like the Frost Maiden never, I guess, basically have woken up, or however that I guess campaign goes. I never really played it. I only was there for like the middle. I never got to finish it. I'm very upset about that. But I mean, I understand that everybody has a life of their own, and they can't really do D&D forever, but I'm still upset of it, just because he never reached out whatsoever. But anyway. I don't know if I should make it just full on canon that Gedodic or Gedodic Wafe is like, I guess, this world's Daftbrook, except whereas the Frost Maiden would have basically woken up and thrown everything out of order. Or if, like, by some unknown circumstances, just that Gedodic never woke up to his magic abilities and instead was basically not abandoned by his mother, far from it, but because something bad happened to the village. A friend. And I have nothing for you. Do I have my crafting table? I left it up there. God, I really like the gold ones too. I don't care if they're like common or whatever. Okay, bucket. Need a bucket. I just gotta follow you around like that. I know you shouldn't be able to despawn to an extent. One, two, three. Or do I have my... No, I don't. God dang it. I probably should have brought some spare iron. Or I should have probably made a bucket in general, but still. It's besides the point. You stay there. Where was I? Right. Where just like the village was instead like burned to the ground. So that's why Gedodic is an orphan, because his village, alongside with no, not that. Alongside with like all of his like whole village, his mother also died alongside of the village, and he was like, I don't know if I should make him the sole survivor, but if that's the case, I feel like that would actually be kind of an interesting plot point for like the characters to like. Oh, I need water. Where's the water source on this? There we go, thank you. Yeah, friend. I should probably head back. Which way is back? Anyway. Where was I? Where was I? Where was I? I am so scatterbrained when I keep thinking about D&D, or when I'm playing Minecraft and I'm thinking about D&D. Right. I feel like it would be like an interesting plot point, and basically to see what like Davra could have been, or what Gedaldic could have been, if one vice, if one saw like their other version of themselves. And basically, if I do that, I would kind of be doing like the whole Mai and Trunks from Dragon Ball Super, where they kind of have to live with a copy of themselves, but they're not really copies of each other because they are like way too different of individuals to be considered copies. So I don't know. It's one of those ideas that's like floating in my head, and whether I'll actually do something with it or not, it's up to me. Although I am leaning kinda towards it, mostly because I feel like it would be like an interesting scenario. And not only that, but if my character Gedaldic were to die, I could actually make a pretty good replacement for oh boy. For my character, just like because it's still technically Gedaldic, just from a different timeline in a sense. Alright, you're gonna be safe in this chest. Don't worry. You're going to be right there. Oh boy. Give me a sec.
No. No.